Actually, one of our favorite pastimes is we love singing it for the students, feeling like rock stars, and we really do a reputable job. Laudate Dominum.
Laudate
You do the first
Dominum.
one.
Oh, you want me to start?
Yeah.
Am I a tenor now?
No, let's just actually. I don't want to sing here.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Choir Guys podcast, brought to you by GIA Publishing Incorporated and Walton Music. My name is Blake Richter.
And I am Danny Gutierrez.
Danny Gutierrez, in the flesh, everyone. He is here.
Yes, I am. And today, our main portion of the episode coming up later on is going to be about submitting conference recordings, as we've done this many a time. So we know some stuff about it, so we are excited to just share with you what we know about submitting conference recordings.
And it's about time for people to submit. We
True.
got national ACDA submissions April 17th.
Coming up real soon. Yeah.
And then state conference stuff is usually like the end of May, beginning of June. So it's coming up. So tune in later on to hear all of that stuff.
So this morning, I came in, and Blake and I teach together in the morning, and he goes, "Hey, Danny, so you know about the deadline coming up, right? I assume you know." And I'm like, "What deadline?" You're like, "The national ACDA deadline." And I assumed that it was mid-May, because it's normally mid-May. I've never known it not to be in mid-May, but maybe I'm confused. Anyway, so he said that to me, and I went, "Whoa, hold on a second.
That's next Wednesday.
That's next Wednesday." So today, at the date of this airing, is Eclipse Day. It's April 8th. So April 17th, 9 days from now, is that recording day. So let's just say I was very stressed. He could tell immediately I was panicked in a cave, and
I
I'm
was
still
like,
in a cave
let me
right
teach
now.
class. You go sit in the corner and figure out your life.
And I'm just like, plan on my document. It was really unfortunate, and this is how it goes with those recordings. You submit stuff, you don't know if you'll get accepted or not, but you just have to prepare accordingly. So maybe the first point we'll talk about is know the date of the application submission deadline. That's kind of important.
I think it's read your choral journal, because I'm sorry, ACDA. I get every single choral journal, and I have a place in my office at school that's listed choral journals, and there's just like a stack like this big, and I never read it. I read it this time.
Wow.
And it was like, here is everything you need to know about submitting, and I just happened to pick that I guess volume or edition of the choral journal, and I'm glad I read that one.
So my conspiracy theory is that they're like, well, this year's national conference is in Texas. We have to find a way to weed the people out. So let's just make this recording date early as possible, so that we weed out the people that didn't know the date was April 17th. I know that's not the truth. I don't think it's the truth, but you never know. So I heard a rumor that you made a kid cry this week. Is that true?
So yeah, I don't like to make kids cry. And it was a very unfortunate thing. And my 4th hour choir, I learned how fast things can spread through the whole school, and apparently even to the high school, about these things. I know you come 1st hour, but those 1st hour boys didn't talk about it. So apparently, you found out. So this was during 4th hour, and this girl had the hiccups. And every time somebody has the hiccups, I just wait until they aren't expecting it, and I try to scare them, because that will take away their hiccups, because hiccups can be very distracting in the rehearsal process. And so I take the rehearsal process very seriously, obviously, and that's why I try to scare children. I'm just kidding. I don't normally try to scare children. But when they have the hiccups, I do. So 10 minutes go by after I was like, "Oh, you have the hiccups? Good to know." And then I'm playing the piano, I'm going through rehearsal, and then randomly I just like I'm in the middle of a measure, and I just scream her name as loud as I could. Well, there's this kid in the front row who was not expecting that, and I think it triggered something in her. Maybe it reminded her of something in her past. I don't know what happened, but she just started bawling, and my entire 4th hour just gave me the hardest time about it. And they were sticking up for her so much, which was so nice, but then they were just tearing me to shreds.
You're such a jerk.
I know, and they were like, "Give her a hug," and I was like, "I will," and so I did, and I was trying to comfort her, and they were basically "Burn him at the stake," because that's my 4th hour. But then She like bolted out of my class. She didn't want to look at me, talk to me, anything, because it literally triggered something like awful in her. And so she ran out, and I tried to follow her. As I'm, going down to the lunchroom to find her, all of these teachers are like, "I heard what you did. Like, how dare you make her cry?" And I was like, "I didn't mean to." But the best part is the hiccups were gone. So my goal was achieved. However, there were some sacrifices that were made.
If I got like a dime for every student I made cry this year, oh my gosh, I would have several dollars. Let's just say that. So
nice. Now it's time for our next portion of the episode. Hack yeah!
Hack yeah!
Oh, we love hack yeah. Danny, you want to start with your hack?
Yeah, so this one is something that I've recently done. I've had some success in it in the morning, actually, when we co-teach our junior high choir. So instead of focusing on the actual product that they come about through sight singing, I've been focusing more on the process. So what I'll do, one of our amazing staff that's in there with us, we'll do the sight singing process, and we have this process that we do every single time. We say sharps or flats. They say sharps or flats. How many?
2.
What's the rule for flats?
Second to last flat.
So what is do?
B flat.
And then what's the key signature?
B flat.
Well done. And then we do our scale process. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, mi, zo, mi, do, fa, la, fa, sol, fa, re, ti, do, so, do, la, do, whatever it is. And then they do the sight reading practice. So what I've been telling them is, okay, so we have this point system. We're going to give a ton of points to a section that has an amazing process. So the process, it entails singing boldly, working on the hard stuff, and instead of just going through it from beginning to end, focusing on the hard portions of it and making sure you're maintaining a steady beat. And then I've noticed a lot of good things coming from that. As a matter of fact, so the other day, we put an emphasis on that. And I think at the end of that sight reading, you made the announcement saying, all right, we need to move up a level in our sight reading. And I think it has directly to do with focusing on those processes. So I tell this to them, I could care less how you sight sing. I care, like, in terms of the actual product, I care about your process. So how good can we make the process? And then specifically affirming the process. So I think we gave I think we're in the billions of points now. I give 5 billion points.
You're in trillions. I'm not gonna say I'm in trillions. You've gone to trillions.
There's been a lot of points given out. So a lot of inflation happening.
I was gone for 2 days, and then I came back, and there were billions of points.
There was a lot of points needed. So, but anyway, so that worked out really well. How about you, Blake? What's your hack?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do this hack, but I've just recently started doing this hack. We use iPads in the classroom. Our choir boosters, actually, one of our choir moms, shout out to Colette. She got us iPads for both of us and for both of our classrooms. And so, we use Fourscore on there. And last year I got Apple TV for my classroom, so that way I could cast to the projector. And now we have a smart TV, so I'm able to connect to that. And so just simply having Fourscore on the screen, especially for middle schoolers, whenever you're like, please number your measures, and a lot of them don't know how to number their measures, or please put a breath mark at measure 17. A lot of them are visual learners and they just need to see it. And so I will just put it on the screen and they can see exactly what I'm writing. Sometimes I'll say, okay, I'm going to start writing things in my score. I need you to write the exact same things. So that way I don't even have to tell them what to write. They just see what I'm writing and they put it in their scores as well. It has just been a game changer. They're able to follow along through that process. It's been great to be able to do that. I know other people use that more effectively, and I'm going to try to start using it more effectively. I know Adrian, who was on our show last week, he showed us one of his annotated scores. And what he actually does is he will start a Zoom session every rehearsal, and he'll have his entire class connect to his Zoom. And so that way he is turning the pages for everybody. He is zooming in on everything on his iPad. So everything that he sees, his kids are seeing on their Chromebooks or on their phones or on their iPads or whatever device they're using, which I think is just incredible. So that's my hack, is to do that. And then I have one more hack that I've just been doing this, I think it was last week or the week before, with my non-audition tenor bass choir. They're singing Set Me As a Seal, the Laura Farnell arrangement of that. It's a beautiful 2-part. I think there's a there's a divisi in the tenor part at one point, but it's a beautiful 2-part piece, very accessible for a non-auditioned tenor bass choir. But my tenor basses, especially the basses, they like to sing very aggressively. You know, they're like, yeah, we're going to attack life with everything we've got. Mm-hmm. But this is not a song to attack with everything you've got. And so over the summer, this might be a little TMI, but I don't give a crap. Give a crap, that's foreshadowing. So over the summer, my brother and his wife got a bidet for their guest toilet. And my wife was like, we gotta try to get one. And I was like, well, I'm about to go to Paris. Maybe I'll try one out there. And I didn't get to try one out. But my wife decided to buy one. And you know, I set it up and I had the mishap of like accidentally spraying myself in the face. Yippee skippy. Anyway, I told my wife, I was like, there will be a day where I use the bidet as an educational like metaphor or something, or I will use it as a tool in the classroom. And that day came just a couple weeks ago. My students were singing Set Me As a Seal, specifically the basses. They were singing it as if you had a sandblaster bidet. I don't know if you can imagine a sandblaster shooting where a bidet usually shoots, but that's how they were singing. And I was like, we need a little bit extra like Charmin Ultra Soft. And so, you know, tenor basses are always into bathroom anything. And so if you're able to incorporate that into your classroom, it's going to be magical. It completely changed the way that they sounded just because they knew they could identify with Charmin Ultra Soft because they've all used the rough like sandpaper, toilet paper. I don't think anybody's used a sandblaster bidet, but they got the picture. They were the epitome of Charmin Ultra Soft. Like those bears would have been so happy because they completely changed the way that they were singing. So, you know, if you go to that concert and you hear the non-audition tenor bass choir, I know you'll hear them. Think of Charmin Ultra Soft in that moment and it'll completely change your life. But anything bathroom related for tenor bass choirs is going to work because they can very much relate to it. Now it's time for our next segment, Fact or Fiction. We haven't done this in a couple weeks. In this segment, I will be reading a story that was either written by a real-life choir director or AI and then edited by me. We're going to change things up, and I'm just going to read one story, and you have to decide whether it's fact or fiction. Now, usually you're like, oh, you usually go fact, then you go fiction, then you go back to fact. No, I'm just going to read one story from now on, so you have to figure it out. Okay. Are you ready, Daniel? Mm-hmm. Okay. Here we go. I had a pretty challenging student who was sometimes quite outspoken. Fortunately, we had a good relationship and the issues in my class were far fewer than other classes. One morning during rehearsal, I noticed she had her phone out and I gave her a nod and the look to put it away. That didn't happen, so when we came to a stop in the rehearsal, I asked her to please put it away. Of course, 2 minutes later, she tried to hide it from me behind her choir folder. I asked her to please put the phone in the cell phone jail on the piano, and she refused. I asked her one last time to comply, and she stood up and put the cell phone down into her bra and shouted, "If you're man enough to come and get it, I am woman enough to let you." The rest of the class laughed, and we were as astonished as I. She refused my request to leave the room, so I had to call the office. When the assistant principal arrived, she greeted him with, "I know you aren't man enough to take my phone." That was the last time I ever saw her or her phone. Fact or fiction?
If this is the only one, I'm unfortunately under the impression that it is fact, although I pray that it is fiction. So we're going with fact.
It is fact. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
No.
I'm not going to name the choir director, but
Wow.
They're one of our good friends, and I can't imagine. I would be frozen and just be like, depending on how I react, I could lose my job. I don't know what to do here, but I mean, he handled that properly by just like being like, okay, I'm going to call the office and not proceed any further.
True.
That's crazy. Well, props to that director for handling that so well. Now it's time to shout out our first sponsor, GIA Publications and Walton Music. GIA Publications is a family-owned company with over 10,000 choral and instrumental editions in print and a wide variety of music education resources.
Walton Music, one of the catalogs in the GIA family, is one of the world's leading choral music publishers. With catalogs spanning over 6 decades of music from across the globe, Walton editions are performed by choirs worldwide.
That's right, Danny. You can find Walton choral editions at waltonmusic.com and music education resources and books at giamusic.com.
So a quick shout out to a piece that we're doing right now in our advanced tenor bass choir.
It's like
we're
their
doing
favorite song.
Yes, Laudate Dominum, which is awesome. It's written in kind of a period with the period of classical music in mind. So specifically the classical period. So very Mozartian, and it's super fun to do. Actually, one of our favorite pastimes is we love singing it for the students, feeling like rock stars, and we really do a reputable job. Laudate Dominum.
Laudate
You do the first
Dominum.
one.
Oh, you want me to start?
Yeah.
Am I a tenor now?
No, let's just actually, I don't want to sing here. But anyway, we do it and the kids are like, whoa, we can do that too. And they just buy into it. So such a cool piece. So thanks again, GIA Publications and Walton Music for sponsoring today's episode.
And thanks, Dan Davison, for being an amazing arranger.
The other Dan. Well, it's that time that we talk about recording conference submissions and our process and what we do. So I have a series of questions and we'll just give a crack at it. So obviously Blake is going to have different answers than myself because he is a sound engineer professional. And I'm like, the equivalent of someone who doesn't know what they're doing with a smartphone, but tries doing something. That would be me. So my answers are going to be a lot more simple, but I do have some fundamental things that
You've
work.
been accepted to MMEA 3 times, to our state conference, and then you've been accepted to SWACTA twice and National ACVA once. So I feel like I want to hear your answers of like, obviously you're doing something right.
Sure.
So there's a lot of that I want to hear, and I know the listeners would want to hear as well.
This is not written in our script, but what are the fundamentals, in your opinion, for a conference submission? What needs to be present and what are your priorities? Blake, take it away.
A lot of it is the space that can make or break a recording, the space that you record in. I'm not going to, name the director or anything, but I've done a lot of conference submission recordings for other people, and they didn't have another place besides their choir room to do the recording. And it's a pretty small choir room, and I had my very professional equipment in there, but my very professional equipment will pick up every single thing. And especially if the mics are really up close, which in a small space, they had to be up close. It wasn't a bad recording at all, but it did have individual voices in there, and you don't really want that for a conference submission recording. So it starts with the space, finding a large enough space, a resonant space that you can hide a lot of mistakes, especially, with middle school choirs, there's going to be some mistakes in there. So that's kind of what it starts with for me. And then mic placement. So knowing where to put the mic or the mics. That is going to also make or break a recording. I know both of us prefer them to be a little bit farther back for conference submission recordings. If you want a really clear and crisp recording of like a professional choir, you need some mics in the back, you need some mics like right up on people, and you need some mics kind of in the middle. And if you have a lot of money, you can have even more mics. But for a conference submission recording, I would say get it pretty far back. And I can get into what I've done in the past here in a little bit, but those are the main things for me on a conference submission recording. What about you?
So I agree. So venue is really important. Getting into a place that has some really good acoustic properties. And I agree also about mic placement. It's like finding someone that looks very, very beautiful. If you get close enough, all you're seeing is a pore. And when you're just seeing
some blackheads in there.
Yes. And when you're just seeing a pore, they don't look as beautiful. When you back up a little bit and can take the whole thing in context, it's a lot better. So placing the mic strategically. Also, I've noticed that if you place the mic close enough, you're going to find some things you don't want to hear. You're going to find specific individuals that are going to get picked up first. This has happened in professional recordings that I would hope would have been really, really great, but there was a lot of issues because it picked up, 4 voices in the front because the recording was so close.
It's probably some of the recordings I've done for you because I will sometimes put mics up front. Sometimes if you're giving me feedback, you're like, next time, can we put the mic a little bit farther back?
I did say that one time, but that's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking of something completely different. But it created some problems, and it was hard to take a recording seriously. Some other things I'll do. So this is in terms of literature. I used to be under the perspective of there needed to be a lot of variety within the literature, and I am no longer in that school. Being on the other side, having to actually adjudicate choirs, I think what's most important is that the 3 recordings or however many recordings you have to submit have the least amount of flaws possible. Period. No matter what they are. Like, let's say one year you did a really, kick butt recording of an Eric Whitacre piece. And let's say the next year you did some other, pieces of music that had some good variety, but were not solid. And you did another piece of Eric Whitacre that was extremely well done, then submit the other Eric Whitacre piece. Don't try to overcomplicate things. I think people get in their own heads and think, oh, well, I need to show this and I need to show that. Take the very, very best recordings you have of your choir personally, no matter what they are, and put them out there. Doesn't matter if they're different, just put it out there. Because at the end of the day, when you're like adjudicating so many choirs that are similar levels, one of the things you're going to look for is what's going to stand out for good, for better, for worse. So you'll look for who has the best tone, and then you'll be like, well, who has the least amount of mistakes? And people will kind of spot check those kind of markers. And if you listen to enough recordings, you keep hearing the same mistakes over and over often. So you just want to get the cleanest stuff you can possibly have out there with the least amount of mistakes. That's going to be perceived well by a committee.
Yeah. And yeah, I served on our state committee and had to pick people to adjudicate step before for our general music and elementary music ensembles at our state convention. And while there's not as many submissions as the choir or the band side of things, the main things that we were looking for was does this choir sing in tune? Period. Is it interesting? Do they blend well together? Do they have individual voices sticking out? All those kinds of things. So I agree with that completely.
It's the basics, nail the basics. Whatever you put out there, make sure the basics are really strong, and that's going to go well.
Yeah, and I'll sometimes be like, I have to have a foreign language piece in there. No, you don't. No. Just pick stuff that your kids can sing the snot out of.
Yeah, if it's not a quality recording, performance of theirs, it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
We talked about the venue. The venue is important. So let's talk about the mics. So I'll start first because mine is going to be really easy. I use a Zoom mic. And that's it. I use a regular old, not even that nice. I use Zoom.
You don't use this one?
I use Zoom 1. And I put it in a place where I'm not picking up too many individual voices, and that's what I use in a nice venue.
You get on a bus and you take your kids somewhere, right? Usually.
That's what I've done, yeah, in the past. Yeah, I've done that.
Might not be able to this time though.
I'm just so okay. Let's really get down to it. Here is the number one thing that you need to remember for conference recordings: know the submission date. Know the deadline for the date. Don't just assume it's going to be the same as it's always been. Assume the worst.
Have your colleague read the choral journal for the first time ever.
I'm so annoyed by this.
Hey,
so annoyed.
At least it's not April 18th and you're finding
out.
out.
I know. Thank goodness. I mean, I'm so grateful that you said that to me. So definitely know and make plans ahead of time so you can take care of what you need to take care of. Not like I am right now trying to last minute wing something to get a decent recording together. So know what you're doing beforehand. Now it works out for the state conference. I don't think those materials are due until June 1st.
Yeah.
So we have plenty of time, but April 17th. April 17th. It's going to be a little trickier.
Recordings in, y'all.
Yeah.
So a Zoom mic, that is especially I have a production company on the side of things, Blake Richter Productions, not a sponsor, but also definitely a sponsor because Blake Richter Productions produces the choir guys. But not a paying sponsor, but also kind of a paying sponsor because I pay for, never mind. So I don't want to have to always bring in all that stuff to record our choirs. So sometimes I'll just have the Zoom mic at school. I'll get a telescopic pole. It's a Shure some odd telescopic pole. And I just put this on it and I find a good place to put it. I find a good setting for the mic gain on it. And we just record from there. Now, sometimes I will add these mics that we're actually currently using, the AKG C414s or 414s. They are about $2,000 to $2,500 combined. So like as a pair. So that's a lot of money that I've, invested because I do this a lot. Like I recorded a concert yesterday. Shout out to the Queen City Chorale. But sometimes I will have this like in the back of the auditorium or near the back of the auditorium or farther back. And I'll have these a little bit closer, but in the mix, I will bring these a little bit farther down. And I'll just plug these into like a wireless Tascam recorder. So that way I don't have to bring my audio interface. I don't have to bring my laptop. I don't have to bring Pro Tools. I don't have to do all of that kind of stuff at school because you want to be able to record often. So that way I don't follow that advice. I'm terrible at that. I will set a recording date and just be like, okay, we're going to record that day. And then we might not get the best recording. So I wish I recorded often. But if you're wanting to record often, then I would have an easy setup so that way you can be able to do that. And a Zoom mic is the perfect option for that. There's many different Zoom mics out there that you can get. But as far as like my entire recording rig, I usually will use these AKG C414s as like more up close or mid-range mics. Then I have some Earthworks QTC 40s that will be farther back in the auditorium. And I have like these Newman mics that'll sometimes get pretty close to everybody. But those Newman mics are more for like the crisp consonants. But again, when you're recording like public school choirs or like when you're recording kids, there's going to be flaws. These mics are really great for professional choirs or adult choirs or collegiate choirs, but not necessarily for elementary choirs. Now, I have used them on elementary choirs that have submitted to the state conference, and one did get accepted this last year, which was awesome. I made sure to kind of put those mics a lot farther back, and I cranked the far Earthworks QTC 40 mics up a lot higher than the close mics, so that way he could have a better chance of making it. And you might say, you're not allowed to edit things. A mix is not editing. You mix it beforehand, and then you record that, and then you send that in. So I don't do any editing, but I just mix it. So that's what I have to say about equipment.
I like it. So the other end is thinking from a judge's perspective. When I listen to recordings, what distinguishes one from another? And we kind of talked about that a bit before. For me, I mean, it depends on the level too, but I cannot take a choir seriously. And this is in general, so this is even beyond conference recordings, but this is the way I feel. I cannot take a choir seriously unless they have great tone. I can't. Like, it doesn't matter if their diction is impeccable. Doesn't matter if they do some really, really challenging literature. Unless the tone seems healthy, vibrant, and in tune, it does not matter. Tone comes before literally everything. In the first 10 seconds, I can normally tell what type of tone a choir is going to have. And even if I can't, let's say I'm just way too confident in myself, and I think I can do it in 10 seconds, but I really can't. The fact that I think I can do it in 10 seconds, I think means something. Most people will get a sense of what they think a choir is going to sound like in the very beginning of the recording. It's just the truth. So you have to make sure that whatever is being put out there is the best representation of the choir. And I think there's no way to represent your choir better by making sure that the tone is vital, it is clear, it has resonance. That is extremely important. Let's just keep things simple, right? At the end of the day, we want to hear, and you can hear it immediately. Like when you're listening to, let's say, high school choir after high school choir, one that has an exceptional tone, they immediately stick out in a good way. And what'll normally happen is you'll take the mental note, oh, this choir I really need to listen to, or I need to consider, is this the choir that I'm going to choose for this?
Yeah, if you guys have any questions about recording stuff, you can email us at thechoirguyspod@gmail.com, and we will get back to you on certain things. If you want to submit choir recordings to us to have us listen to on the podcast, we would also love that. There's a Google form in the description box below where you can add that in.
You can change it to use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it.
This is great for a conference recording. This is not great.
That'd be great. We won't say that to you on the show. We won't be that mean. But yeah, feel free to send those in. We would love to give you guys feedback. Now it's time to shout out our next sponsor, Endeavor Music Publishing. Endeavor is dedicated to publishing the best in new and innovative choral music and to the idea that composers should earn the majority of their music sales.
That's the great thing about this company. Royalties for Endeavor composers are over 5 times the industry standard, so you can trust that your purchase supports the artists who created it.
Endeavor is currently seeking out emerging talent and established composers. If you are interested in having one of your pieces published, visit the submissions page on their website.
Before finalizing the rep for your next concert, visit EndeavorMusicPublishing.com and peruse their new titles. Thanks again to Endeavor Music Publishing for sponsoring today's episode.
Now it's time for some choir news. And man, Beyonce put out a new album last week. I know it's been a couple weeks whenever this podcast airs, but let's talk about that track, Daughter. Everybody that's listening knows what we're talking about. My wife got a text from her best friend saying, listen to Daughter. And this was like on Friday, and the album came out Thursday at like 11 or 12 at night, and we got a text on Friday, and we just blasted it, and there's Caro Mio Ben.
There you go.
What were your thoughts on it?
Honestly, I was so impressed with Beyonce's diction because her diction was so impressive. She went, Caro mio ben, credimi a men, senza di te languisce il cor. A lot of people go, languisce il cor. I was like, okay, she definitely worked with a straight up Italian on that. I was super impressed with that. It was a nice sound.
Buccelli came and helped her.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, all right, so it's going to be easy to assign this song to a student now. Because, Caro mio ben is kind of a hit or miss. Some people are like, no, it's too simple, or they don't like it for whatever reason. Now we just got to play Beyonce and be like, yo.
Yeah, she did it. Dude, her whole album is like, the new album is just so different, and I love it.
It was really cool. I was listening to Blackbird, and then I couldn't finish it because I got so emotional when listening to her interpretation of the song. It was really stunning.
Yeah. So shout out to Beyonce. You'll never listen to this, but
you can come on the show. No, she can come on the show.
Yeah, I mean, and Jay-Z if he wants.
Yeah,
Actually,
sure.
no, the real star, especially after the tour, the Renaissance tour, Blue Ivy. Have you seen the videos of her dancing on the tour?
I don't even know who Blue Ivy is.
That's her daughter, bro.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Blue Ivy rises up out of the stage, and she was like dancing with these professional dancers on a Beyonce tour, which obviously like that's her mom, but still like she was crushing it, and her hair was like so long and just whipping back and forth. Wow. It was amazing.
Blue Ivy.
So thanks, Beyonce, for making the Italian art songs cool again. They've always been cool. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But they're really cool now. Now it's time for our blind listening segment where we listen to submissions from you guys blindly, meaning we've never listened to it. We don't know who this is. We just received it in our email inbox, and we are going to listen to it and give feedback on the fly. I believe this is a middle school choir, and we are going to listen and give some feedback as we listen. So Here we go. Tall vowels there. It's a tough little piece for middle school. That was nice. I like that high note.
It's a lot of color in their middle voices. I think it's a healthy way to go. Just not pushing, a lot of head voice in the sound.
You don't really hear any individual voices.
This pedagogical piece of all the solfege there.
Nice. That was lovely.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it quite a bit. So I think for a middle level choir, what I like about it is there's not a lot of tension happening.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially with treble voices, there's a lot of like pushing, maybe like pushing nasality out of the sound. And I don't really hear that in the sound. As actually, I would say there's a really lovely, lovely color I'm hearing lower in the sound. And what you hear a lot from middle level choirs is they're singing lower, so they just get super, super chesty with it. In a not very pleasant way. I like the artful approach on the mid to lower registers as a whole. And you mentioned something about vowel colors. And I would say for me, I feel like that's a product of just good registration in general, and making sure that it has that high placement in the sound at all times.
Yeah. I would say the only thing there are a couple things that I think could make it even better. Sending or projecting the sound forward a little bit. There's sometimes where the vowels are great, but sometimes the placement of the vowels aren't like as forward as they could be. So it's not projecting as much and it's not as clear as it could be. I know you're all about clear singing, and there is a little bit of breathiness in there, which again, for a middle school treble choir, that's going to happen.
And it's like, it's choose your poison, right? So if you're going to get them to sing clear, there's things that come with that too. So sometimes when choirs are encouraged to sing very presently and very clearly, it'll happen with some pushing as well. I think the biggest indication for me of somewhere the choir could go is the octave slide. If you listen to the recording, they're singing and they're going up. I think it's an octave, right? Or was it something else? Whatever it was, the big slide that they had. When they got to the higher note, you might have noticed that their voices were kind of hooked up at that point. You heard the presence of vibrato, a really clear and mature sound. So what that says to me, it had more balance in the sound, more balance in the registration. So you're hearing the head overtone, but it also has some cut and some dynamic to the sound. So I think that would be a place to explore. I actually do that a lot with choirs. I'll have them sing down an octave and we'll slide up and try to kind of maneuver through the registers, but keep the power and the core and the foundation and the sound. And that can create a lot of good things too. I find that it helps with intonation as well. Just keeping the sound and the balanced register. Sometimes when choirs are overly heady, the sound to my ear gets kind of back sometimes, and that can mess with intonation a bit. Giving it, I want to say there's a level of chest connection that's necessary. However, it has to be done the right way. So if you introduce chest connection too early, that can lead to bad things, right? So the first thing has to be formatted. Head voice needs to be formatted in the sound. And then once that's there, then you can work with combining registers. To my ear, this choir seems like they have a very strong sense of registration. For me, I would take that choir and take them to the next step. How clear can you make it? How vital can you make the sound? Sliding up, using very maybe more closed vowels in the vocalizing. E vowels would maybe help with that as well.
Yeah. Other than that, I thought it was lovely.
Yeah, no, great job. Whoever that is, great job.
Props. Good job. Now we're going to move on to Choir Guys questions, where we answer some submitted questions from you all. This first question comes from someone who teaches junior high and high school choirs, but they were asking, if you only had 2 junior high choirs, what would you choose? So I think this person usually teaches 1 junior high choir, but now they get to add a second choir. So they're trying to figure out if they will choose 1 men's and 1 women's, or 1 tenor bass and 1 treble. 1 7th grade choir, 1 8th grade choir, 1 first year choir, or 1 advanced choir. I know what I would choose, and I think you would choose the same thing, but what would you choose?
So do we have to rank them in order?
That's up to you if you want to do that. I think that's an extra step. I think you just got to pick one that you would choose.
Okay, if I had to choose, if you had only 2 junior high choirs,
can I read your mind?
What would you choose?
Can I read your mind and tell you what you would rank them at and what you would choose?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so Daniel Gutierrez, I think we're gonna have the same. We're gonna have the same.
Let's hear it.
Deal. So I think Daniel Gutierrez would choose number 1 as men's and women's. So you would split it into gender specific choirs because there's so much research about that. And then I think his second one would be first year, then advanced. And then I think number 3, which I feel like this could be almost the same. number 3 would be 7th and 8th. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. So I figure dividing them to treble voices and tenor bass voices is advantageous because then you get to work on similar vocal issues and similar dynamics, which you can get a lot done. You know, if you've never had a treble choir and a tenor bass choir, once you go there, it's hard to do anything else, especially in the middle level situation, even in high school situation. Honestly, all of our choirs mostly are separated in that way for high school choirs, except for one choir that's a mixed choir, the top choir. But ideally, that's the way to go, in my opinion, because you're addressing similar issues at the same time. I do like the concept of first year and advanced because it's differentiating according to level. So you can put people in the right spot. If you get a lot of first year people who don't know what they're doing in a very advanced choir, that can, change the classroom dynamic.
Slows you down.
It slows down. And also it's hard to really work on similar things across the board like you would otherwise. 7th or 8th grade, I could see that being advantageous for depending on where the voices are at, because in 7th grade, you're going to get a lot more cambiata stuff happening there. So you'll have some similar ranges. And I've done that before and I've had positive results with it. But out of the 3, definitely tenor bass, treble, first option, first year advanced, second option, 7th, 8th grade, third option.
Now, I already had this conversation with this person because this was texted to me 2 weeks ago, and so I didn't want to leave them hanging. But in addition to that, I said men's and women's, like gender specific, would be the way to go. And then they said, what if I only have 7 boys? And I was like, I would still do men's and women's because in that tenor bass choir, you could do solo literature, you could do stuff in rounds. There's still a lot that you can do to work on the tenor bass voice.
And you can still recruit into that choir theoretically, depending on the situation. And it's probably easier to recruit tenor basses and into a tenor bass choir as opposed to the alternative. And
whenever I was a student at the school that I currently teach at, it was almost 20 years ago when I was a student there, the men's choir was 2 boys. It was 2 boys, maybe 4. So it's grown a little bit since then. Were you in that choir? I was not. There's a mixed choir that most people were in, and then there was a women's choir that there is a lot of kids in, and then the men's choir had 2 boys, and so they would sing solo literature, and they would just rock it up there by themselves. And they put the robes on and everything. And there might have been more than 2 boys, but I think at one point there were 2 boys. So they still got a quality education. And it's
just amazing they approved the class with 2 people in it. That's the craziest thing.
Times have changed.
Times have changed. 2 boys, you get a class. What?
It's more like individual tutoring.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, man, if I could sign up for a class like that, I would do that in a heartbeat. Imagine how much you would grow over the course of a year. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up this episode of The Choir Guys. Don't forget to subscribe to The Choir Guys channel on YouTube to be notified when new episodes are coming out. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Once again, The Choir Guys is brought to you by GIA Publications and Walton Music.
Thanks.
Make sure to browse their website before programming music for your next concert.
You can follow the show on all social media at The Choir Guys Pod to catch bonus content throughout the week. Feel free to message us through these platforms if you want to hear us talk about something specific on the show.
Also, tune in next time for a discussion regarding building tenor bass voices in the classroom.
Tenor bass, tenor bass, tenor bass, bass, bass. Also, if you would like to sponsor our podcast, we would love for you to sponsor our podcast. Message us on social media, email us at thechoirguyspod@gmail.com. Reach out to us. We would love to shout out your company or your business. Thanks again for watching. We will see you in a few weeks. Bye.